Imagine you're at an airport, not in a war zone, not on a protest march, just standing in line at Hong Kong International Airport with your luggage. You've got your passport, your boarding pass, your carry-on bag, and in your pocket, one smartphone. Nothing unusual so far, right? But let's talk about what's actually on that phone. Messages, emails, old social media posts, cloud photos, maybe a news article you shared 3 years ago. Now imagine a police officer walks up and says, "Give me your phone password," just like that. What would you do? Here's the thing. In Hong Kong, as of March 23, 2026, refusing to give that password is now a criminal offense. Up to 1 year in prison? Can they actually do that? Yes. And the bigger question is, why? And what does it mean for anyone passing through Hong Kong? Today's story isn't just about Hong Kong. It's about power, privacy, and what happens when a government decides your phone is the evidence. This story starts with an ordinary traveler at an airport. But the more you hear, the more you'll realize it's actually about you. Let's start from the top. On March 23, 2026, Hong Kong's government quietly published a sweeping set of new legal amendments. These weren't passed through the legislature, they were issued by the chief executive alone, bypassing lawmakers entirely. That's how national security law works here. The changes updated the implementation rules for Article 43 of the National Security Law, Beijing's sweeping security legislation imposed on Hong Kong back in 2020. Under the new rules, police can require any person suspected of a national security offense to hand over device passwords and decryption methods. Refuse to comply? Up to 1 year in prison plus a fine of $100,000. That's roughly $12,800 US. Give false or misleading information? That's worse. Up to 3 years in prison and a fine of $500,000. The state is not playing around. The Hong Kong government pushed back on critics. Police cannot randomly demand phones on the street, officials said. A magistrate's warrant is required first. But here's the nuance. Once that warrant is issued for a device, the password demand follows automatically. No separate court order is needed. Think about what that really means. Is demanding a password after a warrant just a technical upgrade? Or does it cross a line that wasn't meant to be crossed? The U.S. Consulate in Hong Kong issued a security alert the very next day. This law applies to everyone, including U.S. citizens just transiting the airport. To understand why this law matters, we need to go back to what state power looked like before smartphones even existed. During Cold War crackdowns, secret police searched offices. They opened desk drawers, they seized paper files, printed pamphlets, and handwritten contact lists. In Soviet bloc countries, the KGB raided printing presses, confiscated typewriters, and arrested people whose names appeared on a single contact sheet. In authoritarian Asian and Latin American regimes, one flyer was evidence. A meeting minutes document could get you arrested. A mailing list was dangerous. The information that could destroy you was physical. Paper, ink, handwriting, things you could hold, burn, or hide under a floorboard. States were limited by physicality. They had to be somewhere, touch something, find a real object. Evidence required presence, effort, and human risk. Back then, people thought, I haven't written anything down. There's nothing to find. That logic made sense in a world of paper. It doesn't anymore, because everything that once lived in a file cabinet or a meeting room has now migrated to one single place. The device sitting in your pocket. Think about what's actually on your phone right now. Messages, location history, bank transactions, contacts, photos, cloud documents, years of life, compressed. Now think about what Hong Kong protesters used in 2019. Telegram groups, encrypted apps, real-time location sharing, anonymous crowd-funded payment platforms. The 2019 protests were among the most digitally organized in history. Thousands coordinated in real time with no centralized leadership, entirely via smartphone. Authorities who wanted to understand those networks faced a new problem. The evidence wasn't in a filing cabinet. It was in encrypted apps on private phones. A phone isn't just a communication device anymore. It's a political map. It shows who you know, what you believe, where you've been, and what you've said. Stop for a second and think. What's actually on your phone? An old political post? A donation to an overseas group? A sensitive group chat from years ago? In Hong Kong, the line between personal communication and political activity blurred during 2019. After the national security law, it never snapped back. The state didn't change what it wanted. It still wants to map political networks. What changed is where those networks now live. The smartphone became the new file cabinet, except it holds 1,000 times more data and it's encrypted. And that encryption is exactly the problem. For the first time, the state could no longer automatically access the evidence it needed just by walking into a room and picking something up. Modern smartphones are genuinely hard to crack. In 2016, the FBI famously couldn't unlock a shooter's iPhone without Apple's help. That fight went all the way to court. End-to-end encrypted messaging apps mean even the company running the service cannot read your messages if they're properly configured. The math protects you. Phone storage encryption means that without your PIN, you essentially have an expensive brick. Even professional forensic tools struggle with modern devices. Think of it this way. The police seized a safe, but the safe is made of military-grade steel. They cannot drill it. They cannot blow it up. The easiest solution isn't to break the safe. It's to find the person who knows the combination and legally force them to open it themselves. That's exactly what Hong Kong's new law does. It doesn't try to crack encryption. It makes the human key, you, legally required to cooperate. Notice how precise this is. When technology can't be broken, the law breaks the person instead. And if you refuse, the prison door opens. Legal experts at Mayer Brown noted the rules don't restrict access to cloud data. If your phone is logged into email or documents, that data may also be reachable. The scope is wider than it first appears. Anyone who knows the password, an assistant, a family member, may potentially be required to provide it under the law. The Hong Kong government's official position is clear. This is about national security. The law targets secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces. Officials say the amendments modernize investigation procedures. Similar compelled decryption rules already exist in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore, they point out. And that's technically true. The U.S. federal government and several states also authorize compelled decryption under specified circumstances, though courts still debate the limits. But critics argue what makes Hong Kong different is political context. The national security law defines crime so broadly that the threshold for suspicion is extremely low. The 2024 Article 23 law added offenses including sedition, espionage, and external interference. Each definition is wide enough to cover a surprising range of ordinary activity. Under these laws, sharing a critical news article about China could theoretically constitute sedition. Attending a foreign-funded conference could be seen as collusion. Would they actually enforce it that broadly? That's precisely the problem. Nobody knows exactly where the line is, and that uncertainty itself becomes the threat. That legal uncertainty creates what scholars call a chilling effect. People self-censor not because they did something wrong, but because they can't be sure what counts as wrong. The U.S. State Department's 2026 Hong Kong Policy Act report was unambiguous. Beijing has systematically degraded Hong Kong's political autonomy and civil liberties since 2020. The phone password law didn't come from nowhere. It's part of a decade-long effort to close off the digital spaces that sustained political opposition in Hong Kong. So here's where it gets personal. You might be thinking, I'm not a protester, I'm not an activist, I'm just a traveler. Why should I care? Here's why. The U.S. Consulate's alert was explicit. This law applies to everyone in Hong Kong: visitors, tourists, and transit passengers at the airport. Everyone. You don't have to be arrested to face risk. If police obtain a warrant which requires reasonable suspicion of a national security offense, your device is subject to examination. You might think you have nothing to do with national security law, but here's what's changed. The definition of what counts as relevant has shifted dramatically. Who is at elevated risk? Journalists, researchers, NGO workers, business travelers with confidential data. Anyone who has publicly criticized the Chinese or Hong Kong government online. The State Department specifically warned that political social media posts made outside Hong Kong, posts you wrote years ago in the U.S., could be a risk factor. Think about that. A 2019 tweet supporting Hong Kong protesters, a Facebook post about Tiananmen, a shared article about Xinjiang. All of it lives on your phone. Mayer Brown put it plainly. Once access is granted through a device, the scope may extend to cloud-connected data. Your email, documents, messaging platforms. U.S. border agents have similar authority, by the way. Over 55,000 device searches happened at U.S. borders in fiscal year 2025. This is a global conversation. What makes Hong Kong different isn't just the law. It's the breadth of what counts as a national security offense and the severity of the penalties attached. Mayor Brown advised travelers, log out of all cloud accounts before entering Hong Kong. Consider using a dedicated travel device with only what you need for the trip. The risk isn't that every tourist gets stopped. The risk is that the rules changed, and more ordinary activities now fall inside the zone where things can go wrong. Let's zoom out. Because Hong Kong isn't alone in this. Governments around the world are asking the same question. How much access should the state have to private digital data? The UK passed compelled decryption rules under the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act back in 2000. Refusing can carry up to 5 years in prison in serious cases. Australia's Crimes Act, New Zealand's Search and Surveillance Act, and Singapore's Criminal Procedure Code all include provisions compelling digital access under certain conditions. The difference in Hong Kong is political context. National security is defined expansively. Courts have limited independence. And the law applies extraterritorially, even to acts done abroad. This isn't just a Hong Kong story. The question of how far the state can reach into your digital life is playing out in every country right now. In the United States, the Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches. But the border is a legal gray zone. Courts haven't fully resolved the encryption question. What's changed globally isn't the state's desire for access. That's always existed. What changed is the sheer volume and intimacy of what smartphones now contain. Your phone holds more personal information than any diary, letter collection, or filing cabinet in human history. Your entire private life, compressed into a rectangle of glass, and increasingly that rectangle is what governments reach for when they want to know who you are, who you talk to, what you believe, and what you've dared to say. We think of our smartphones as personal property, but states are increasingly treating them as archives of evidence. Where do you stand on that tension? Privacy used to travel with us physically. You could carry secrets in your head or burn a letter. In the digital age, you can't leave your data behind. It follows you everywhere. So we've come a long way from that image at the start. A traveler at Hong Kong airport, passport in one hand, phone in the other. A passport tells the state who you are. A suitcase shows what you carry. But a phone reveals what you remember, who you know, and what you've dared to say. The old world of drawers and file cabinets required physical presence. The new world of smartphones requires just one thing: the key. Your password. In Hong Kong, since March 23, 2026, that key can be legally demanded. Refusing to hand it over is no longer just an act of privacy, it's now a crime. Is this uniquely authoritarian, or just what modern law enforcement looks like everywhere? There's no simple answer, but it's a question worth sitting with. Because wherever you land on that debate, one thing is clear. The border is no longer just a line on a map. Sometimes the border is the lock screen in your hand. After hearing all of this today, what do you think? Should you swap your phone before transiting Hong Kong? Or is this just the new normal of traveling in 2026? That's a wrap for today. If this story made you think twice about what's on your phone, that's exactly the point. Stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.